Welcome back. While nearly 80 million Americans have already casted their votes early, the Bronx is preparing to turn out tonight for Election Day. Joining us now to rally us out to get out and vote and also remind us what this election means for our borough and more is Councilmember of D-16, Vanessa Gibson. Welcome, Councilmember. We're always happy to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
Of course. One of the first things I wanted to mention is that you're one of the most energetic speakers in the Bronx to get people to rally and vote. And we're always glad to have you. Like I said, how are we turning up the volume and rallying the Bronx to get out and vote virtually and safely in person this election day?
So I think there's been a lot of efforts underway by elected officials, advocates, leaders, different community groups, organizations like Common Cause New York, Justice Votes. I've joined many of them at in-person press conferences, virtual press conferences. We joined the Morrisania Band Project, and we had a virtual concert that was hosted by BronxNet a few weeks ago. And we really want to encourage residents and eligible voters of the importance of voting, the fundamental right that we have as Americans to exercise our right to vote, and reminding ourselves of the fact that our ancestors were subjected to poll taxes and literacy exams and so many other things to disenfranchise voters, particularly marginalized people of color that have often been underrepresented. And so it's really important that we continue to get out the vote. Every day should be get out the vote. And this is also the first time that we have early voting for a presidential election. So I think it's even more exciting. And the fact that there's so much on the line in this president's race for our next president and next vice president, we have to act as if everything is on the line, because everything really is on the line.
Thank you, Councilmember. Last week here in the Bronx, lines were very long and spirits were high since the beginning of early voting. What did you hear from Bronxites participating in early voting just last week? Were there any challenges?
So I think Bronxites were excited about early voting. I think with any election, there's always a challenge. So not every voter knew where their early voting polling site was, because it may not be the same as their traditional voting site on general election on election day. So there was a little bit of confusion, and not everyone has internet access to go to the city's Board of Elections website. So getting beyond that confusion, for people that did know where their early voting polling site was, there are 17 that were in the Bronx over a 9-day period from October 24th through November 1st. So there were long lines, a lot of people that were just very patient, right? And understanding. You didn't hear people arguing, cussing each other out and yelling, screaming, yelling at the poll workers. Everybody was very patient. You had a lot of organizations and elected officials that were giving out food, pizza, water, PPE, to remind them of the importance of voting, to thank them for their patience, their cooperation. I even saw lots of creative things. I saw people with chairs. I saw folks reading, books, listening to music. I saw folks dancing. I mean, we were just getting it on, because it's exciting. It's exciting to be a part of the democratic process when you realize that our ancestors stood on very long lines too. So years later in 2020, I think many people understood the reason why we're waiting on long lines, because we're voting in a COVID-19 world where you can't, use polling sites to their fullest capacity. You have to social distance. We have to protect ourselves, right? We're wearing face masks. So I think when you put all of that together and, the reality we're facing today, many people are more than understanding of being on a very long line to vote.
The Bronx made it happen, even in early elections, and they're turning out tonight for Election Day, November 3rd. I did want to mention, Councilmember, that as we know, the Bronx has been subject of historically low voter turnouts. The South Bronx in particular, for example, only had 32% of people vote in the last midterm election. That's low compared to nearby communities and the country. Councilmember, how are you feeling about the Bronx's turnout so far?
I'm feeling really good because I've seen some of the early voting numbers. So on day one, there were 14,000 plus Bronx voters that came out. And then it's a cumulative add. And day two, we were at 30,000. Day three, we went up to 40,000. And so every day we got several thousand voters from the Bronx that came out to one of those 17 early voting polling sites. It's encouraging. It's also a reminder of the past history of the Bronx being one of the lowest counties with lower voter turnout. And I think it's a reminder that we have traditional voters, our older voters, that always come out in every single election. But as we educate, as we encourage, as we promote and raise the level of awareness, you have a younger generation that is coming out to vote. And that's what you saw on those long lines. You saw young people, you saw seniors, you saw veterans, you saw so many people. And I really hope that, you know, at the end of the night, when we get the results, you'll see that the Bronx's numbers in this year's election turned out higher than ever before.
Yeah. What top issues are on the line for the Bronx this election season, Councilmember? Just a reminder to our viewers that are voting tonight, what issues are on the line?
Goodness, I say everything. Everything is on the line. Affordable housing is on the line, public housing, small business protection, MWBE reform, making sure that we deal with climate change and environmental justice. Public education is always a top agenda. Access to quality and affordable health care remains a priority. Food access for us in the Bronx, and really surviving and rebuilding from COVID-19. The thousands of Bronxites that we lost to this deadly pandemic were older Bronx residents with underlying health conditions. It meant that they had asthma, high blood pressure, heart disease. They were obese. They had so many preventable diseases that were further exacerbated when they got COVID, and they died as a result of that. We were dealing with these health disparities pre-COVID, during COVID, and now after COVID. And so food access, focusing on urban agriculture, farming, health bucks, nutrition, healthy foods, healthy food options, those are all priorities that we all have. So I say everything is at stake. Everything was on the ballot line because all of these issues are interconnected and have to work together.
And we know we're electing a president and vice president tonight, but let's also remind voters of the local races that they may see on the ballot this evening and why those races are just as important.
Yeah, so also in addition to President and Vice President of the United States, we are also voting for our members of Congress, the House of Representatives. And so we are supporting, you know, our Democratic candidates like Richie Torres, like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, as well as Jamal Bowman, newly elected as well, and Adriano Espaillat. Those are our members of Congress that cover the Bronx. And then going down to the state level, we also have the members of the New York State Senate and the New York State Assembly who are up for re-election on the ballot this year. And then locally in the Bronx, we have 3 candidates that are going to be Supreme Court justices. And those names that I know of are Andrew Cohen, my colleague in the city council, Kim Wilson, and Bianca Perez are the 3 candidates who are on the ballot for Supreme Court justice.
There we go. Councilmember Gibson just gave us the full-on ballot right there. So you have no excuse to not know who's running, right?
Yes, yes.
And also today we've got 2 options. We can drop off our absentee ballots no later than 9 p.m. or we can get in person to the poll sites, of course, just by remaining safely distant, 6 feet apart, wearing our masks and being safe. Councilmember, can you help provide our viewers with some reminders and tips for either option?
Right. So, you know, just reminding everyone of the option of voting by absentee ballot. You can return your ballot to the Bronx Board of Elections tonight by 9 p.m. at 1780 Grand Concourse. That is just north of Mount Eden in our district. And then also in person, as long as you are on the line before 9 o'clock, you will be allowed the opportunity to vote. So even if the line is long and it's past 9 o'clock, if you are already on the line, they will not turn you away. Do not get offline. You stay there and you wait until you vote. There is nothing more important than exercising your right to vote. And I think we are reminded by 4 years of this federal administration and what we've seen with COVID and so many things that have happened across the country that voting is a fundamental right. So many people have been disenfranchised and dissuaded from voting. Formerly incarcerated men and women, people of color, women, marginalized community, immigrant communities. So many people have been told you can't vote and you shouldn't vote. ICE is going to be at the polling site. They're going to deport you. None of that stuff is true. But people are very worried because they hear some of the rhetoric from this president. So I remind everyone that yes, your vote counts. Yes, we need to make sure that we're voting because when we all vote, we have the ability to count and we have the ability to win. And this is not just for us, this current generation. When you vote, you are voting for the future generation of young kings and queens in our communities that deserve better than we received.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Gibson, for joining us this evening. And get out and vote, y'all. You heard it here.
Yes, that's right. Get out and vote. Vote like it counts.
A reminder, you heard it, the Bronx, get out and vote today, Election Day, November 3rd. If you're voting absentee, make sure you drop off your ballot at the Pollsite by 9 p.m. today or at the Bronx County Board of Elections office no later than November 3rd today by 9 p.m. If you're voting in person, you can find your Pollsite and view a sample ballot at findmypollsite.vote.nyc. Just remember to wear your mask, remain 6 feet apart, and safely head out to the polls to have your vote count and your voice heard this evening. That's all for our show today. Thank you for tuning into BXRx. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, wishing you and your family safety and wellness now and always. Get out and vote, y'all.